All right. Well, since you are the guest of today's show, would you like to be the person who counts off today's second round silver?
All right. I guess I see people still picking names, so I'll wait for them to finish.
Oh no, we're all ready.
Oh, okay. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Have fun. Good luck, guys.
Okay.
So, for those of you not familiar with this, in addition to just, attempting to beat the ancient cave, our runners are going to be attaining points through a number of objectives that you can see on the tracker. And the team with the most points is the winner. Some of these are objectives that both players have to do, which are marked by by the single circle, where each side of the team would have to mark it off for it to be a complete point. Others are just single, one player per team can do it to get the point.
Yep, so to give a quick little summary of the point structure, this event was built in mind to have teams of 2 take on a laundry list of tasks rather than just doing a straight gung-ho shot down to the jelly, which is what I think the events that you've seen us participate in have been a bit more familiar with. This event features a few setup composition goals, for instance, bringing Lexus or having specific capsule monsters, as well as if you complete specific tasks either in general or on particular floors. Some floor goals can be found within every 10 floors and can be earned as far as a point goes by one particular party member or racer, and the others are team-based goals in which both runners on a particular team will have to fulfill the requirements for that particular task. I don't know, Silver, if you're that familiar with some of the more odds and ends of the cave, but you've taken a look at the tracker checklist, I assume, at this point. Does anything here look unusual to you, or like something that might be interesting to watch?
I mean, some things I'm certainly happy to see are things like bringing Lexus and not removing him, because I have watched more than a few attempts of Elmagus doing reject percent, for example. I know how awkward Lexus is. Additionally, more awkward because there is a very few number of weapons that are especially good for him in general, and especially against the jelly. I know that there's I know some of the more scary looking enemies show up on here, apparently. I know
so some of the late game enemies, like the Orkies, are probably scary looking for those points as well.
So yeah, so like surviving a round of combat that includes at least one of those is spooky.
Well, fortunately, in these early floors, Lexus is not too much of a detriment. He starts with the lowest base HP out of all the units and can get one-shot by a couple of things, unfortunately, which can be a little problematic. But after a couple of levels, he keeps up pretty well. If you take a look at Mike's screen, for instance, you may see Lexus, but he doesn't necessarily appear like he normally would. I would like to show or advertise the Christmas sprite setup that has been crafted by our very own Eve, with 3 underscores, the person who made our art, and also with a collaboration of Dank Meats. They've put together not only a summer sprite setup, but also a holiday season sprite setup. So kudos to MikeMike for running a graphic mod. We've also seen a couple of interesting blue chest finds, and They are found mostly on the blue team. The side on Hoppie found an engaged ring, which is unfortunately pretty useless in the context of the Ancient Cave and gift mode as a whole. But Michie found a water jewel, which is of interesting value. Michie finds Shield, which is an important spell that can be utilized to earn a point later on regarding utilizing some rare options to buff party members, magic resistance, and that's just something that you don't normally see in the context of a run.
Yeah, I don't normally see spells like Shield get used very much in Ancient Cave, but I imagine that for things where you're trying to survive enemies that are otherwise very scary, you're going to be pulling out some of the stops that you don't normally bother with in a regular run that you would just run away.
There are a couple of stats that matter more than most. HP is pretty much the king of survival, just because of how damage is calculated, and agility is very important in terms of being able to just run away and avoid combat as a whole. But there are rare situations that having a little boost of defense or a little boost of magic resistance can help. Oops. I just sent you something, I'm sorry.
It certainly wouldn't be the kind of spell that I would be excited to see. They all know.
Yep, under normal circumstances, that wouldn't be an exciting spell. Mrs. MikeMike just found Strong, though. That's a pretty exciting spell to find.
Yeah, it looks like Mrs. MikeMike's attempting to loot out this party room a little bit. Strong is one of those spells that I would be pretty excited to see. Any of the more basic healing spells, just for the longevity they give.
Unfortunately for MikeMike, he doesn't have that much danger to roll through. Michie's in a kind of sticky situation. He's got a point he can earn by fighting a batch of mimics and defeating them without getting a surprise attack on them. So he's trying to earn
I
that
saw the
point.
first one was a surprise attack, and it's like, okay. It would certainly help if Artie does not get focused down.
It can be difficult to take these guys down because they're just threatening enough that you don't have a lot of good items or good weapons, and your party's going to be struggling a little bit to kill them. If you have a good tier 3 spell like Ice Bulk or Thunder, then you can deal with them pretty easily. But if you don't...
We're going to cash in that big boomerang to...
Yeah, and that's exactly a kill. They have, I believe, 60 HP, so the big boomer is just a straight-up one-shot on them. Hoppie using an X-Boomer, even better, more reliable damage there. Showcasing that items in the Ancient Cave can matter a little bit more than you might expect. There aren't too many sources of damage in terms of items. There's boomerangs, and there's the Fireball and Ice Ball. They have their perks here and there, but early floors under 15 and so are definitely where they tend to shine. Interesting Phasa shield for Michie. One of the rare shields that boosts agility. We may see that come into play a little bit later on to make probably max him a little bit faster, since he does need a little bit of bulk pretty soon to be able to survive a few things.
There's an apron, and that's something I saw on the...
Yep, on the tracker. So there is a point in here to have Tia or Salon equip an apron, and then get into a battle while the apron is equipped. It's not much of a complex point, but it does require bringing Tia or Salon in order to be able to use it to begin with. You may find some runners are bringing Tia and Salon early on, such as Michie, with the anticipation of maybe finding one or two blue chest items, maybe a Iris item, and then providencing out, swapping Tia for a different party member potentially, and then re-entering with
because there is that point for Providence as well.
Mm-hmm. So we've seen a couple of varied party compositions, not too many. Most of the party comps have been Decker, Maxim, Artie, and Lexus, but there are a couple that have changed. Michie appears to be the only person that in this setup did not bring Lexus. So it's interesting to see if they are going to Providence out. They may just end up switching to Guy. Yeah. Valor and a Fatal Pick for Hoppie.
Yeah, Fatal Pick's nice. The course just ran away, unfortunately.
Don't stop pressing the button.
Thunder Jewel for Hoppie as well.
Apparently we missed Hoppie getting a curse lifter, so that is that's a run off to a good start there.
So the curse lifter is going to be important. There is a point in this setup that requires each party member or each player on a team across the entire team only having one deadly weapon equipped, which includes the good deadly sword, the fatal pick, or the deadly rod. There might be a situation in which during the run they'll need to uncurse their deadly rod so the other player can equip one of their deadly weapons of choice to get through a sticky situation. Without having the Providence out, that's pretty much the only way to be able to remove your cursed deadly item, because unfortunately, while they are great in their capacity, they are stuck to you, they're glued to you for good.
And there's a deadly rod for MikeMike.
That would make me.
So I can tell you, if you haven't kept an eye on RPG Limit Break for the past couple of weekends, MikeMike and Mrs. MikeMike are probably one of the more practiced teams out of the bunch that are here. Them and Solar Cell plus Mini Lily are the two teams I'd say that I've seen streaming their practice more than anybody else. So I'm excited to see how the MikeMikes handle everything for this run. They did pretty well last time, getting one of the highest scores in their quarterfinal rounds out of all the teams.
Now Hoppie's going to be hoping for a core kill. Does have the bolt spell to help out with that if any of them stay.
So the perk to dealing with cores, if you're just tuning in and you're a little bit unfamiliar with the Ancient Cave as a whole, the Ancient Cave is a 100 floor, well 99 floor randomized cave or roguelike dungeon, you could say, in which party members enter and they start off with pretty much nothing but their base levels, one of pet of their choosing, and 10 potions that they can have to just heal through a few punches early on. They find all of their treasures along the way, and ideally they're gaining enough EXP to level up, become strong enough to deal with the many encounters that the cave will bring them, and find some good stuff along the way that allows them to defeat the end boss at the very end, the Master Jelly, which has a time limit or turn limit to defeat. Cores are among the enemies that give the largest EXP by far for the particular time in which you'll find them. So all of our players hunting for red cores is a very important play here.
Yeah, Michie and Hoppie both got one red core each, and that was several level ups.
So if you haven't watched speedruns of this game, or you have maybe, and you're just quite a little bit unfamiliar, one red core can bring you from level 1 to level 9, and 2 red cores can bring you from level 1 to level 11. Most any percent speedruns tend to end at or around level 28 to 29, give or take a couple of levels. So that just goes to show how important EXP from just a couple of cores early on can really get you jump-started. Interesting plays by MikeMike. He finds a Sky Sword, a Bolt or a Thunder Elemental Sword, but he also defeats Imps, which are weak to the Thunder Element with the Flash spell. Now there is a point to defeat an enemy that is weak to the Thunder Element with a Thunder Elemental spell, or a Thunder Elemental attack in general, so MikeMike earns that point by finding Flash pretty early on. He follows it up with a core, which is excellent for him.
Yep, some cores down for MikeMike.
If anytime you watch one of these runs, you'd love to see anybody get a core or two. Red cores early on especially, because they just give you everything you need to get set up and go. There are blue cores that will be the next set of cores that appear within the 30s, 32 to 34 specifically, and they'll be a very hot commodity as well if players can get them. They're not quite as important as reds to start things up, but they're still very important in terms of being able to just have that safety EXP to plow through as they go.
Another thing to note, somebody in chat pointing out, Guy getting no love. However, there is a point for using a Providence within the first 50 floors. So some of these runners might use that Providence and then bring in Guy, who is indeed better for actually trying to clear the jelly.
Yeah, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be either Hoppie or Michie, since neither one of them brought Lexus, making them among the few people that did not bring Lexus in the run, or in the context of this entire tournament. If they find Providence early and manage to score a good blue chest or two, they may just opt out for that. Although they may just decide to continue, because there isn't really any need to Providence that early. However, Providencing before floor 50 is required for the point. And the sooner you Providence out, the more time you'll have to swap your party members, re-equip up, and dive back in. So Hoppie finding a Mirror Plate right now, along with that Thundo Jewel he found earlier, do give him a couple of decent options to re-dive in with some pretty good things. So a lot of the points that can be earned early on are the ones that are a bit more time-consuming. For instance, killing some scarier enemies like the Red Mimics, dealing with Torrents, which come in the, I believe, 18 to 22 range by getting summoned by Green Clays. Later on, as you proceed through the cave, you'll see our runners trying to do a couple of interesting things in terms of dealing with specific enemies, but those points are not necessarily as time-consuming to earn. In contrast, they are a bit more dangerous, such as dealing with combat with enemies that can really scrape up the party hard, potentially leaving them either having to recover from a lot of damage or possibly kill them, depending on whatever their setup is and what their
Yeah, I imagine
sustainability
that
is.
I can imagine that depends on, like, a runner might choose those types of things depending on like how they feel their survivability and recovery resources are.
Mhm.
For example, Mrs. Mike just had to use her only miracle on Lexus just now.
You almost don't want to revive Lexus early on, if you can help it, because even though he does offer some contributions, he's just very squishy in these early levels. Low HP, low defense, and limited equipment options for armor make it just easy for him to die. And he's spending a lot of time dealing with trying to keep his HP up.
Attempting to loot out another monster room. And a little zombie party there.
I think he does pretty well getting a couple of chests in here.
Yeah, different enemy. Really taking advantage of how different enemy movement patterns can be predictable and using that to get through them.
There's another thing that in terms of speedrunning the cave, of course our players are speedrunning right now, but we're not doing just a pure speedrun. If you were to join the speedrunning community here in the AC Discord, definitely consider it. It's a game that you don't have to be super dexterous with your fingers, and you don't have to memorize frame-perfect tricks and this and that. A lot of this game is just figuring out and memorizing different enemy movement patterns, or perhaps elemental weaknesses on enemies, and then just using the stuff that you have to deal with the situations you encounter. Ideally, you're not getting into many fights, but even a casual playthrough of this game, where you just beat up stuff and take your time opening pretty much all the stuff that you find along the way, is a great way to just learn this game. And each time you go through, you'll do it with a little bit less in terms of resources and become more knowledgeable along the way. So CR runners are roughly 20 minutes through, and most of them haven't even come close to the floor 20 range, except for Michie, who's only just barely entered the 20s. Again, some of the points that they're trying to earn here are a few of the more time-consuming points to earn. If you happen to watch last round, you'll know that some people spent maybe just about a minute trying to earn the point related to killing a Torrent with a fire elemental attack. Others spent upwards of, I think, 8 or 9 minutes trying to just get one to summon itself before even dealing with the kill itself. And a few of the points coming up soon are related to enemy drops, which, while not atrociously low, are still kind of low enough to make repeated encounters pretty much required. Some of which dealing with fruit drops, which are in the 15 to 20% range, and some of which the sour ciders, like what MikeMike is fighting from the Newborgs, the silver golems here, which is, again, about a 20% drop. And something MikeMike can take advantage of with Lexus right now is that he's got a tool equipped, I believe it's a coma hit, It's a weapon that attacks all enemies, and there is a point to defeat, I believe, 3 or more enemies in a single hit. He also earns the Sour Cider there, which is good for the Charred Newt plus Sour Cider point. So Lexus does offer a lot of options. In the context of this run, he himself is not worth a ton of points, but a lot of the things that he brings to the table are easily acquirable for him to earn more points with, for instance, killing multiple enemies in a single hit. Only he and Artie have access to weaponry that can attack multiple enemies at once, and Artie can only equip one of them, while Lexus can equip all 3 of those weapons.
Yeah, I have to say that's one of the areas that my knowledge is going to be especially weak on, is what actually makes Lexus useful, and what can he actually take advantage of.
So he has the highest intelligence stat, which makes his magic attacks do the most damage, and there are a couple of point incentives related to dealing damage with specific elemental attacks. Spells do give you the option there to take the most advantage of them. For instance, getting the point by defeating enemies that are weak to the Thunder element with the Thunder spell. Lexus would be the best at doing that. Defeating the Torrent with an elemental advantage of Fire is important because they're kind of bulky for the time that you find them. And if you have a spell like Fireball, the tier 2 fire spell out of the 3 tiers, it does help to have that added power from Lexus, whereas other characters may not have the ability to deal that damage. Maxim, being a spellcaster, can't even use fire magic in this game, which is kind of bizarre. And we see Michie is out. Michie Providence out for the point. It doesn't look like he did a party swap to take Tia out of his team. It looks like he still has Tia in. Finds shield pretty quickly, so we could take advantage of earning that point very soon. So Providencing out at this point, all 4 of these items are still very capable of making it to the jelly before time runs out, even completing the tasks along the way. So it's very interesting to see someone Providence out, because you know that they're going to have to step up their pace just a little bit beyond comfort levels to try to make it to the basement.
Yeah, but I imagine that doing it within 20 minutes is gonna help out a lot. And I think Michie was one of the runners that didn't have a deadly or anything like that, so is losing less out of Providencing.
So he had a couple of blue chest items, as you can see, two accessories, the Spider Jewel and the Water Jewel, which aren't that great, and the Aqua Helm, which boosts agility and defense by a pretty sizable amount. So he does re-enter with a few helpful things that let him catch back up quickly.
Michie in chat just saying, bad run. Yeah, it's just sometimes you don't get a good start. It's yeah, I'm gonna grab that Providence and just take a new start.
Now the Providence, if you're unfamiliar, it does not appear until floor 20. And it has a chance to appear on every single floor along the way from there, but it cannot appear sooner. So you do have to play the cave for roughly 10 to 15 minutes on a normal, just casual pace if you're even going to attempt to reach the point in which they can be found in the first place. So it's not something that you can just dive in for 3 floors, quick Providence out, and dive back in. It's something you do have to put a little bit of investment in. So he put pretty much the exact amount of time investment in for using that Providence as he wanted to use it in Escape. So a Sour Cider for Mrs. Mike from killing the Newborgs in that battle. The point to have 2 Charred Newts, which are pretty much a 50% drop, and 2 Sour Ciders, which are about a 20% drop across both teammates, is a little tough to earn, but they both managed to do just fine in earning them pretty quickly. I'm just seeing this. It looks like Michie found a Sonic Ring. If you're a little unfamiliar with how the cave's chest loadouts work, every so many floors, more items are added to the pool of goods in which you can find from the red chests. Blue chests can be filled with the same items regardless of what floor you open them on. Rings, accessories like rocks or jewels, Helmets and shields, though, only appear either on the early floors 1 through 9, or in blue chests. So interesting ad here. Thanks, Hoppie. So the Sonic ring specifically is a very rare ring. They only appear on a couple of floors before floor 9, and it boosts agility by a very sizable amount, one of the largest agility boosts that you can get. Whereas the Twist Jewel you can farm from enemies that have a decent drop rate of that, and it can also appear in a blue chest for use upon re-entry. The Sonic ring is just, you only have a couple of floors to find it to begin with. So finding that is very, very nice. So Silver, have you ever run the ancient cave, or have you just been an active follower of the cave?
I've run it casually. I have not cleared it. I had an accident involving a dragon on the 90-something floors.
Unfortunately, the gold dragons and the silver dragons can really end a run pretty quickly if you accidentally bump into one of them or mistime your steps or something. It can be very rough. So
yeah, my brethren weren't very nice to me.
Oh no. Well, they build good memories at the very least, because after you invest 5 hours or so into diving that deep into the cave, just get your face slammed against the floor by some silver dragons. That's well, you never forget when that does happen to you, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I'll probably make another attempt at some point. I do enjoy it, even though I don't know this game as well as some of the other things that I play, but it does have that same kind of thing that I enjoy about it, which is for those who don't know me, I play a very wide variety of randomizers. This is kind of like a randomizer that's in the original game itself.
Yeah, that's the perk about this, is that you don't have to beat the game to unlock gift mode. You don't have to hack this in. This isn't some randomizer ROM hack that was built like the Free Enterprise community has done for their Final Fantasy IV games and whatnot. This is just part of the game. You can access it through the campaign, although with limited party members. Very specific party compositions, only 3, I believe. And if you beat the game twice, then you can unlock Ancient Cave's gift mode, which is a mode that allows you to join the Ancient Cave with a party composition in pretty much any comp you want, as long as Maxim and one of your capsule monsters is in it. And with that perk, you can just play this infinitely, and it's very replayable because it's different pretty much every time you go through. It's extremely difficult to RNG manipulate, so you see very little of that in the community. The resources out there are very effective in terms of helping you learn, and you can just put the controller down and walk away and take a break if you need to. The game's not going to fight you for just having dinner or walking away to take care of your family or whatever it is that you have to do.
MikeMike trying to push a level out of the capsule monster there.
Yep, so MikeMike has a secret fruit which can be used to bring Fumi, or gels, up to his final form of feeding. But there is a point incentive now for within floors 21 through 30 to feed your capsule monster up to its second form. And it can be any one of your capsule monsters, but 3 of the capsule monsters are banned in terms of you lose a point if you end up using them. So he's feeding up Flash, which is the MikeMike special. You'll also see Blaze as a commonly used capsule monster in this entire event, just because the fire element is pretty useful for the floors below 25. And Blaze being a fire elemental capsule monster who just attacks randomly, it is nice to have that access. So when MikeMike gets Form 2, we see Hoppie trying to get a Torrent summoned, which is a 5.88% chance to get summoned from these green clays, the only enemy that can summon them. Killing a Torrent earns several points. You get 1 for killing an enemy that doesn't normally appear in a battle, which in that case, it means if you bump into an enemy sprite, certain enemy loadouts would happen. If an enemy that gets summoned in is not part of one of those loadouts, then that earns you credit. Defeating the Torrent earns you a point as long as you defeat it with the Fire Elemental attack, which I believe Hoppie has, otherwise he wouldn't be going for this. And also the green clays themselves can drop an elemental fruit, I believe the Earth fruit, And if you do that on floors 21 or 22, then you earn a point for that as well. So this battle can be worth a lot of points for Hoppie. And of course, each player can take advantage of this opportunity. But of course, if you don't have the proper elemental advantage, then that's one less point you're going to be able to get. So Hoppie's being careful not to kill the green clays too quickly, just because he probably doesn't realize how many options or situations there are where green clays will continue to appear for him. And I know he wants that point going through all this. So he's playing it pretty safely here. I think Mrs. MikeMike just found a curse lifter. So, and Michie found a deadly sword. So there's a variety of good items being found across
which
all
point
corners.
are you referring to there with the green clays?
Oh, so there's a point related to defeating an enemy that does not normally appear in a battle. And there's a point related to defeating a torrent with a fire elemental attack. Green clays are the only enemy that can summon a torrent enemy as a mob.
Oh, okay. So that could be a potential 2-pointer.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also the point for the floor objective between 21 and 30 where you earn a fruit from a battle. Earning an earth fruit drop from a green clay is a 3rd point that you could potentially earn. I suppose if you want to go even further, green clays are weak to the thunder element. So Hoppie casting Bolt on a green clay is a 4th point that you could earn from this single battle. So it looks like he's primed up a fire elemental attack. Yep, flame attack. And he defeats it. So there's 2 points earned just from this battle alone without even counting the drops.
Yeah, and that brings them just a single point behind the Mike team. Mike Cubed team.
He doesn't get the earth fruit, unfortunately, but there's still plenty of time to earn fruit from various other enemies within this range of floors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a pretty quick 2-for-1, all things considered.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it can be a while until they do summon the torrent. Again, we saw last round some people waiting almost 10 minutes just to get a torrent summoned, while others got lucky and got one within a minute or 2. Michie's in a weird room. The enemies in here aren't overly brutal, but they're just going to slowly enough to make things inconvenient or teleport around.
Yeah, and with the stairs there, that can really
wants that blue chest, and this isn't a room that's going to end his run, but he wants to get through with as little combat as possible. So
he doesn't have any healing magic yet either. Oh, that's a Gorgon Rock. That's a nice one. That's a nice find.
He finds a Gorgon Rock and Ice Valk. The Gorgon Rock is pretty good for boosting stats. It isn't the best in terms of its IP ability. It doesn't really help against the Jelly, but again, he has Tia, so he wants defensive options for her, and that's going to be very good for her. And Ice Valk is a very helpful spell coming up soon. Some very important enemies will be weak to the Ice Element, in particular Hydoras, which don't appear until the 50s, but are required for her to be killed in order to earn a potential point. So you can see 3 of our runners that haven't Providence out. They're all pacing at pretty much the same pace. So they're 34 minutes in, and they're in the floor ranges around the 20s to 30s. Again, normally an any percent pace would have them over halfway through the cave by now. And all of these runners are very capable of doing that. But with the context of this run featuring completing some unusual tasks, they do have to pace a little bit slower. Now, we see Michie already on green clays, and he's not that far behind the other runners like Hoppie and the MikeMikes who were just dealing with them a few minutes ago. Michie gets his torrent very quickly. Now, something else that the runners can do is that if things go a little bit sour, they can run away from the battle, like Michie did, reassess their team's setup, change up equipment, do whatever they need to do, and then re-enter the battle against that torrent. So even though the enemy sprite hasn't changed, the enemy layout in the battle is going to be the same. The enemies do heal completely in between fights, though, unfortunately, but it is an option that lets you say back out, heal up, do what we need to do to get another chance. So we're going to have an interesting setup here to deal with this torrent. It looks like the Gorgon Rock that was found in that blue chest earlier may end up coming in clutch, as it does have an attack that is fire elemental. It's multi-elemental, but fire is one of its elements, so I suppose it does count in terms of beating it with a fire elemental attack.
Yeah, that gets you that fire elemental attack, so that's what we need.
There aren't too many options for dealing fire damage. There's a couple of weapons that come with an innate fire ability. The Red Saber, the Fire Dagger, and the Burn Sword. There's a couple of loot chest weapons that have that feature as well, the Spark Staff and the Sizzle Sword. Maxim can use one and Artie can use the other, as well as Tia. There's a Fireball item, and then of course there's Blaze as the pet.
Unlucky MikeMike encounters some blue cores.
He's trying.
But doesn't actually get to kill any of them, despite having 2 different blue core encounters there. And 5 blue cores across the encounters, but 0 for 5, unfortunate.
This is interesting. It looks like Mrs. MikeMike is trying to get one summoned, while Michie is trying to deal with the torrent. You can see they attack twice, making them one of the earlier enemies that attack 2 times per turn. Having Maxim and Tia, who are both kind of squishy units, makes things a little risky to try to, deal with the long game in terms of fighting with one of these, because the longer you sit there and wait, the more problems you're going to deal with.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, Michie doesn't actually have a healing spell yet either.
So he has, I think the only fire option he has is if somehow he can get Blaze to run the kill, or if he can get enough IP to use that Gorgon Rock, or the Gorgon Rock, but he's probably going to have to squish it down a little bit before using it. He doesn't have any fire elemental weapons, or I believe a fireball item. There's also the S-Stock weapon, which has a fire elemental IP attack. Not its regular attack, just its IP attack. So let's see if this kills. I'm very interested to see how this turns out.
That works out.
Yep. So Torrents have 175 HP. He deals a little over 200, gets that kill very comfortably. Making combo attack useful for probably the first time in history.
Yeah, Michie confirming it is in fact the only fire elemental ability in the entire pile of stuff that he's got.
That's the exciting thing about Jelly Jam. It's kind of what I conceived when I was trying to build this whole thing to begin with. It was, one, a team-based event that allowed players of any caliber to just jump in and attempt to try to beat the cave while doing interesting things along the way that require you to think a little bit outside the box. And 2, to just see if you can showcase the usage of different items or different abilities that you just normally wouldn't either have access to or use in the first place, or deal with enemies that you'd normally just avoid to see just how dangerous they really are, or maybe discover something along the way after you've completed the run and learn that, hey, maybe if I get into a battle against this isn't the scariest thing, or hey, maybe I can use this to benefit me in some way. Something that you just don't normally see in a lot of other games. So I think all of our runners now have a curse lifter, which is pretty unusual. I think in our last run, maybe there was one curse lifter discovered across all 4 runners. And now
Michie finding another Providence.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the second one isn't nearly as useful as the first. Some spooky enemies over on Mike's side.
Yeah, so fortunately, these aren't going to be run enders for him. They are assassins, which are very fast. They do have access to an instant kill attack, and they are actually related to a point, or 2 points, you could say. 1 point involves getting a 50-50 or surprise attack on them, which means encountering them from the side or the back and getting the guaranteed surprise jump on them. The other point comes from surviving a instant death attack, which can be utilized by assassins. There are a couple of other enemies within this particular range of floors that do the instant death attack.
Oh, we do get the jump on them that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting that first strike is a big deal because, again, with as scary as they are, you don't want them to get the jump on you. And while they're not the deadliest in terms of just raw damage output, having the access to Terminal Blow, being a one-shot attack, and also just being so fast means that you're just likely to take a good wallop while you're dealing with them.
They are going to have to get Mrs. Mike to also do that to get the point, to cash in on the point for it, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, the team objectives mean that both players on a team have to fulfill the requirement in order to earn the point. It's not half a point that can be stacked across several half completions. It is either an all or nothing, which both participants do it, or both participants didn't. We're seeing a little bit of interesting play where Mike decided to feed up his capsule monster pretty much as quickly as possible. It looks like Mrs. Mike was waiting a bit longer to do that. Probably to get a handful of better items to just dump down her capsule monster's throat. So they're the only runners that have taken Flash, who's the Holy Elemental capsule monster. It can heal the party, and also in its second form has an ability to boost a single party's attack member. A single party member's attack power by a decent amount. Now, it's probably not going to get used in the context of the run, even if you were to see a jelly kill or a jelly battle come out of it. But it is neat to be aware that it is an option. Now, if you ever took a look at GameFAQs back in the day, when people were still trying to discover how to do things like run the Ancient Cave efficiently, you may see a lot of love for Flash, saying, oh, Flash heals you. How exciting is that? You should definitely bring him. That is neat. However, Flash, and any capsule monster at that matter, cannot be controlled. So you can't encourage them to heal you. They could potentially look at your party as being completely beat up and still just choose to punch or defend or do nothing of value. So as nice as free heals are, it's pretty difficult to take a lot of value out of an AI-controlled companion. Another curse lifter for Michie. While Mike's dancing with shadows. Shadows have an ability called Vile Laughter, which is an instant kill attack. He's hoping that it's going to cast Vile Laughter and that one of his party members will survive the attack from it to earn that point. Looks like Mike did not get that with Maxim, but there's another shot here in which Decker does manage to survive it.
There we go, that's a point.
He survives 2 of them, luckily. Now, Assassin's Terminal Blow has an 80% chance to kill. The Vile Laughter only has a 25% chance to kill, so that's why he went for that one. And for you, the viewers that are curious about the points for not only our racers in particular, but just the run as a whole, definitely take a look at the tracker. And if you need a little bit of additional information about a point, mouse over that point, and you'll see there's a little tooltip if you hover over the question mark bubble. Gives you a bit of additional detail on the points. For instance, on that Survive an Instant Death attack, you can see over that point what the percentage of the kill actually is. You can see what the percentages of enemy drop rates are for fruits, etc. You can see, for instance, if you want to afflict a status ailment to a Sphinx between 61 and 70, you can mouse over that and see what status ailments the Sphinxes are vulnerable to.
I actually have a question about one of those. It says, like, for the Samo Jewel, it says the drop must be earned on floor 41 to count.
Yes, so there's certain enemies that can summon other enemies, but because the floor range of points for this particular area is floors 41 through 50, getting the drop on the floor that is not within those bounds of floors technically means it wasn't earned within the proximity of floors that it's supposed to be earned within. So Samurais appear on floors 39, 40, and 41. But because the floor point range is for 41 to 50...
Got it.
Just because you see the enemy doesn't mean that the drop would count.
So for that exploration goal, you have to be earning a jewel from battle on floor 41 to 50. And so... Okay, that makes sense.
Yep, you can also see that a little further down for Bat Rocks as well. And
it looks like MikeMike gets to take out a green core for a very hefty chunk of levels.
Yes, green cores are very important to a speedrun. They only appear about 10 floors past blue cores, which doesn't seem like that much. But in terms of their EXP, they're worth as much as 3. And they are the second highest EXP providing enemy in the entire Ancient Cave. Only behind the 4th and final type of core, the No core. So getting them less than halfway through the cave is very, very important. So they only appear in, like all cores, they only appear in groups of 3 in terms of floors. So floors 41, 42, and 43 are where the green cores appear. They can bring along others. Oh, hey, nice spark staff for Mrs. MikeMike. They can bring other cores like blues and reds with them. Of course, they're not worth as much, but I mean, the EXP is EXP. And after,
especially like a blue core at this point is still very valuable.
So you're a little familiar with the cave. You said you've done it a little bit on your own. You followed Elmagus, you followed myself. Do you know what comes after green cores?
There would be the no cores.
So no cores come after that, and they appear on floors 58 through 60. So it's going to be a little while till you get to them. Now, do you know what dangerous threat appears immediately after green cores?
Ninjas are soon.
That's right. So ninjas appear immediately after. So floors 41 through 43 are the green cores. 44 through 46 include ninjas. And well, you know enough about ninjas to be scared by them, right?
Oh, absolutely. Although this is kind of like with the assassins earlier, like sometimes I know an enemy is scary, but I don't always know why it's scary.
Oh, ninjas are scary.
I just know the reaction of more than a few runners, and I know that ninjas in particular move incredibly fast across the map, and can therefore be really difficult to avoid.
Yeah, they'll hard aggro you as soon as you enter the room, even if you don't see them. They'll move up to 2 tiles at a time to chase you down. They will... They're not always going to outspeed you. If you have a little bit of agility boosting stuff, you might be lucky to outspeed them with Artie or Tia. But They go twice per turn, or they have an attack called Knife Thrower, which hits the entire party very hard. They can appear in groups of up to 3. Because they aggro you so hard, they will block doorways and potentially make it so that way you can't get around them or through them unless you engage them in combat. They don't have any elemental weaknesses, and they're just kind of tough all around. They also have a 3% chance to use an attack that has a 60% chance to just kill you outright. So they're just rough. While blue mimics are scary. Ooh. Yeah, this is worth interrupting. What was that?
That sure was a Decker Blade.
So Hoppie, having not died yet, finding a Decker Blade is pretty darn cool.
For those who don't know, the Decker Blade, definitely one of the most coveted weapons for fighting the jelly itself, because its IP ability will do 50% of a target's current health. Which, when you're looking at the 10,000 hit points of the jelly and a 3-turn window in which to fight it, is definitely by far the one of the best abilities to be using against it.
If Decker is the only person who can use it, is his namesake. It is the single highest source of damage possible against the jelly, and it requires an entirely full IP gauge in order to use. Making it kind of rare in terms of being able to get utilized. You gotta get Decker beat up a lot. In terms of the IP gauge itself, that's something that we haven't really explained. If you're unfamiliar with the IP gauge, but you've seen the little yellow bar in battle that each party member has under their blue and green HP and MP bars, the IP gauge is kind of like a limit break from Final Fantasy, where you get beat up for a while, you'll just kind of build an anger meter, and as that fills, depending on how much is within the IP gauge, it allows you to perform specialized abilities based on the equipment that you have equipped. Each weapon or armor or accessory may have a piece with it, or an IP ability with it, and the Decker Blade, of course, requires a full consumption of a gauge with it, which means Decker has to get beaten up a lot in order to have enough IP to use that ability. Other abilities are useful either against the jelly or other enemies. We saw combo attack get used by Michie earlier on, and that was requiring some IP consumption. The stone plate that Michie just found has a revival ability, which can be used to bring a party member back to life, which is great if you don't have any revival items or spells and need a person back to life in a pinch.
Yeah. Also, while we were talking, we did have an assassin preemptive go down for Hoppie there. So another one of those half points that Michie will have to follow up on, and Michie's sitting there looking at some shadows, probably looking to get that dodging instant death.
He's probably thinking about killing one and then leaving the other to just...
Yeah, Michie doesn't have the same kind of, like, Michie doesn't have Valor the way we saw earlier, so doesn't want to have to res multiple members of his party.
Mm-hmm. Now, what can be helpful, although it's not really possible to confirm its effectiveness, is if Blaze, or the capsule monster that you have, is targeted with it, and they survive, then that counts. Ooh. Yeah. So Michie takes one dive from it. Hoppie takes another one.
Oh, never mind. Michie picked up Valor at some point.
And Hoppie's got Rally, so they can both come to life pretty effectively.
I'm gonna trim it back down to one shadow after it summoned its buddy.
So Michie's in kind of a sticky room too after he deals with this, in that he's got an assassin in the room as well that he'll have to deal with. Now, he could try to get the 50-50 battle against it, which I don't think he's already earned that point. If he does that, then that's an additional that he'll get.
Yeah, but I believe only Hoppie has actually picked up that one.
Mm-hmm. Rare find an old sword for MikeMike.
It's another one of those strong jelly weapons because of doing damage IP ability that does damage based on current health, a percentage of current health.
So the Decker Blade does 50% of the current HP of your foe, plus a variety of different based on variants, and if you're in the front row, it does more as well. The Myth Blade does 25%, plus all that variance, and the Old Sword does it does 1/6 of an opponent's current HP in terms of damage, and that can also be coupled with a Cancer Rock to do a second attack on the second turn, follow up after. So there's a lot of value in the Old Sword.
Yeah, Michie having a problem with that 25% survivability on Vile Laughter here, as we're watching one laugh after another just land.
So where we saw the Torrent be a problem last round for people to get after minutes and minutes and minutes, we're seeing Vile Laughter after Vile Laughter connect just so hard. While MikeMike is dancing with Sirens over here, this is a pretty scary encounter too, potentially. His entire party is confused. The convenience of the game's mechanics is that if you input a command to run away from a battle, and then your party members get afflicted with status ailments like sleep, paralyze, or confusion, that runaway command will still occur. So he earns the point there by having an entire team of confused party members just because he input the command to flee preemptively. A good play.
Yeah, that's more than one party member affected by a status ailment applied by an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And Michie now attempting to harvest a point off of these assassins.
So we see some green cores for HoppieTheFool. This is 66,000 EXP. This is EXP that you'd be getting against some of the last enemies that you see in the cave as a whole. So that green core double is extremely important for propelling him into the lead in terms of having some additional bulk, some good agility. He's practically the level that an any percent run would want to be when completing the Ancient Cave to begin with. And he's not even halfway through the cave. Little interesting weapons for Mrs. MikeMike. A Freeze Sword allows her to deal with some Hydora encounters later on along with her Ice Bulk spell. But she's also got the Crystal Wand, which is a Holy Elemental 3x, or 3 times attack power dealing damage dealing weapon that Artie can use later on as well for dealing with either the Jelly or some Dark or Shadow Elemental foes that might be coming up pretty soon if he doesn't have a deadly, or she doesn't have a deadly already on Artie, that is. She's in a spooky room now, though. Looks like she has some ninjas to deal with. Or assassins, I'm sorry.
These are just assassins, although I do not believe that until just now, actually, Mrs. MikeMike had not gotten the surprise attack on them, so that's filling out the second half of the team objective there.
And you can see at this point, even though it's anybody's game, we're only halfway through the round. And both teams still have plenty of points to earn. Team Mike cubed being 6 points ahead, and having MikeMike himself being a little ahead of everybody else in terms of depth of the cave.
Not only depth of the cave, but like thoroughness in how many of the exploration goals have been achieved on the way down. The single goals and the team goals. MikeMike didn't miss anything except for having an enemy teleport to the same tile that he was on.
Hoppie is rolling in the EXP after getting 2 more green cores. Any speedrunner's dream would be getting just 1 green core, maybe 2. He gets 4 like it's nothing. Just in time for ninjas, though, so he's going to be preparing for the worst coming up.
Yep, answering the questions about the jelly. They are on the tracker, but defeating the jelly is a point for each person. Defeating the jelly with no rings or rocks equipped is an additional point. Damaging the jelly with a tier 1 spell or a non-multiplier, non-multi-attack IP ability is a point. Defeating the jelly before the time runs out is a point, and defeating the jelly with Lexus in your party is a point if you are the first person to do it in the race.
To go a little deeper on that, damage the jelly. So if you damage the jelly with a tier 1 spell or a non-multiplier, non-multi-attack IP ability, what that basically means is either cast a tier 1 spell or use an IP ability from pretty much any weapon that Lexus has access to, Lexus exclusively, or a very small handful of other options. Lexus can be buffed up to deal a decent amount, a couple hundred points of damage with one of those abilities, or because he has the highest magical offensive stat, he can do about 100 or so damage with a basic magic spell. So there is a lot that you get out of that in terms of just dealing the damage. Now, the idea behind that point is because it's a team goal, both participants make it to the jelly on a particular team, or make it to floor 99, and both manage to pull that attack off, then that's 2 points that they make just for making it there and encountering the jelly. That doesn't involve even defeating it.
Yeah, making it to floor 99 within the time limit just is a team completion goal, even if you don't actually engage the jelly at all.
Now, it can be scary, though, because it's practically equivalent to throwing a turn away, because where Lexus could cast Thunder and deal, say, almost 350 or so damage with a spell cast, you're instead using a pretty weak option to only deal 80 to 180 points of damage with one of his attacks. So it can be risky for people that definitely feel like they have a jelly kill or are kind of on the fence with it because they're just not quite sure if going a little bit soft on one of your actions might, risk blowing the kill off or not.
This is MikeMike having a hard time getting that enemy to teleport to the tile that she's on.
So it's really risky here to do that because when enemies teleport on top of you, there is a chance that they could get the surprise attack. And there's also a chance that you could get the surprise attack on them. So if they teleport on top of you with a full enemy loadout, happen to be an enemy type that goes maybe twice per turn, and then they get a jump on you, and maybe they're faster than you too, so they get 2 full rounds of double turns, then you take a significant risk of getting yourself walloped. Now, you can sometimes move to a point where you'll land on their tile, and that involves being 2 spaces away from the enemy and just holding that particular direction, and kind of running into their tile as they're loading onto it. Mr. Mike might want to take a moment here and kill off a few of these guys, just so that way, if he does...
He's just watching over on Hoppie's screen, having a really close call against those ninjas.
Yep, ninjas are not the first run-ender that you're likely to appear or encounter with, because that would be blue mimics, but they're the first run-ender that really comes at you. Blue mimics, they're stationary, so you're more than likely able to avoid them, but ninjas, they will hunt you down. They will hunt you down hard. And if you have to fight multiple of them and you're pretty low on healing items, you're barking up a bad tree.
Yeah. Hoppie has, on the other hand, killed multiple green cores, so had the survivability for Artie to just get focus fired and still survive long enough to cast a healing spell. Tia being the only one that went down, Tia not exactly known for her survivability.
Mm-hmm. Even with very, very high quality equipment, because Tia's HP is just so low, a lot of the attacks enemies drop out. Just because of how damage is calculated means that Tia's just going to take a beating and not be able to really deal with the punishment that comes her way. For context, Artie and Maxim often have a little bit less than double her HP, but their defensive capabilities are also way higher than hers, so they're much more likely to survive. Magic damage reduction is pretty difficult to come by in this game, and the magic resistance stat only reduces damage that you take by 1/4, so it takes 4 points of magic resistance to reduce 1 point of damage, which is a lot, considering most party members don't even cap out at like 120 MGR. So characters like Decker, who naturally just have a ton of HP, 400 or 500 sometimes, they can just take a ton more abuse because even though they have less of the resistance stat for it, they have so much more HP to absorb it with. So Hoppie, with all those levels, is about to deal with ninjas again. Whereas Mrs. Mike finds a water gauntlet, a pretty rare agility boosting item that Artie can use, but also Tia or Salon, or I believe Lexus.
Does it have an IP ability worth speaking of?
Unfortunately, most of the shields in this game really don't have IP abilities that matter. There is the mini shield and the anger brace, which both have the ability to boost attack power by a significant chunk. 40% of a party member's particular attack power, so it's great to use on characters like Decker or Guy or even Maxim, so that way that when they do a big finisher move with a 3x damaging weapon, or they use a Hydora Rock in conjunction with it, they can just deal a lot of damage. It can often be worth using that buff instead of attacking for a character like Artie or Tia, who can use those shields and provide that buff. But most of the others don't have much that matters. Some will boost magic resistance by 40%, some will boost defense power by a bit, but most of the time you'd rather just win the battle than deal with boosting up your stats. At the Jelly, the only ones that matter are the ones that boost your attack power. About half the shields don't even do anything in terms of have any IP abilities, and there are most of the loot chest shields that provide temporary immunity to one particular element for that specific user, and that immunity is really just having damage. So the game is a little bit confusing in how it describes the effect there. So equipping, say, a Bolt Shield to Decker means that he takes a lot less damage from a Thunder Element. The IP ability to make Decker immune to Thunder Elemental attacks to begin with isn't as important as just having the shield equipped and reducing the incoming damage to begin with.
Mike having a hard time getting out of this room. There's not really, there's only one exit, and there's a lot of enemies crammed up over there. Trying to lure them away.
The Salamander's going to creep towards him slowly, so there's only so much room that he has to play around with that Salamander before it eventually gets too close for comfort. So he takes a risk, trying to go into a door, and there is a strategy recently discovered that allows you to deal with enemies below you that might have a chance to move, so that they don't walk up and back attack you while you're walking through a door. Unfortunately, he did not employ that strategy and lost 2 party members in the process.
A lot of ninja fighting going on over on Hoppie and Michie's side, on the PD and JJ side.
Yeah, unfortunately,
intimidating.
Now, ninjas have a 2% chance to drop a Misto Jewel, which does count for the point to find a rock or jewel from a battle within this particular floor range, but a 2% drop
is exactly what you're looking for there.
Yeah. You'd much rather have the 10 minutes on your clock saved and all of your resources still in your pocket than the 2% chance to find a rock that's going to be potentially useful at best. So we're seeing some disparity between the runners now, whereas Hoppie and Michie are both within the upper 40s, and Mrs. Mike is pretty much on par with them. Mike himself is almost 15 to 20 floors above where everybody else is right now. He's accomplished a lot in his go, which goes to show just how confident he is with his abilities as a spelunker, I guess you could say. But he is taking a little bit of a risk in terms of diving this far ahead. Now, it's exciting to see if he continues to have good luck, because he has the old sword but no Decker Blade, if I recall. So it's going to be a little risky to see if he actually does manage to earn the kill, given what he's got, or can continue to go through. But while all of our runners are struggling, they're still making very good time. Just a little bit behind the halfway point in terms of floors, and a little bit behind the halfway point in terms of time is going to be a little bit of something they'll have to overcome, but the points coming up after this batch of floors, assuming there aren't any more party rooms for our runners to have to stun all the way through, means that they can take advantage of the points coming up that don't require too much time or effort, and hopefully bring the scores a little bit closer. Now, MikeMike fighting some dangerous gold Gorems. If you're unfamiliar with these are absolutely a run-ender if you aren't properly equipped to deal with them, and they block a doorway, simply because of how difficult they are to kill. They are susceptible to the deadly weapons, even though MikeMike might have you thinking otherwise due to already just missing again. They can go twice per turn and do a very powerful attack. Or they can use Golden Mist, which could be a wipe if used multiple times. Ideally, if he gets Golden Mist, it'll only happen one time, and Decker will have some pretty good health to sponge it. He cuts it close, but manages to survive and live another day. The Iron Gorems on Hoppie's screen, in contrast, are still kind of dangerous, but not nearly as scary, as they don't have an attack that hits quite as hard as Golden Mist. Their Iron Kick can hit the entire party, but it doesn't hit for quite as much. And they're not as difficult to kill to begin with. So if you, the audience, have ever run through the ancient cave with Lexus, go ahead and share your thoughts, because we do have a lot of Lexus representation today. Or Tia, if you have any thoughts about running with Tia. I guess, meaning Salon and Guy are the only people who didn't really get any representation in this particular round.
I'm actually pretty surprised to not see Salon or Guy. Salon was pretty much my go-to, being kind of like the healer that's a little tankier than Tia is, or just caster in general. And then Guy is just like, really good damage outputter, has a couple really good weapons like the Gady's Blade.
Yep, so in terms of any percent, a typical party will have Decker, Maxim, Artie, and Guy as the fourth. Salon, in a 100% run, will typically be brought in instead of Guy, because in a 100% run, you're going to kill everything, you're going to be at a very high level. You want the additional deadly user, and when Salon gets to about level 30 or so, her agility skyrockets from there. It's just her early stats are kind of low, and really, really make it difficult to get her levels. Tia is faster than Salon in the lower levels, and that matters in context of runs like this, where you'll want that agility, because you're avoiding a pretty good amount of combat in their equipment options. Salon can equip the most things, while Tia can equip almost the fewest amounts of things. But again, that agility can matter so much if you have a double deadly user, or if you need someone else to drop a smoke ball and get you out of a combat or cast destroy or something, where Salon just doesn't have that until later in the cave under a typical brisk run or quick run. Lexus unfortunately brings none of that to the table. He doesn't get access to deadly weapons. He doesn't have really incredible agility to speak of, so he's not slinging out destroys any faster than maybe Maxim, who is pretty much on par with him. And he has the lowest amount of things equipable, which means he's going to have decent HP, but he won't be able to use too many nice things with it.
Ooh, I just saw a really nice item find on Mike's side.
What was that?
It was a Myth Blade.
Oh. So Mike currently has an old sword and a Myth Blade. Given that he's as deep as he is currently, it is pretty interesting to consider if he'll try using those for a kill. He'll have Decker and Decker and Maxim, who can use both the old and the Myth. So he can use it all. He'll of course hope for a Decker Blade, but he might have a kill with just those, depending on the rest of his setup. And as Chico said, Lexus is good in the early floors. His biggest perk is that he has the highest magical damage output, just in terms of the regular elemental spells like Firebird and Thunder. Plus, when paired with an elemental ring, he does have the highest damage output out of all characters in terms of magical damage. He also has early access to the Figo Root and Coma Hit tools, which hit all enemies on the screen, and it does pretty good damage for the time in which you find those tools. So if you find them early on, it can really supplement not having any other mighty equipment options or magical options and allow you to conserve on resources. Sticky room for Mrs. Mike. The enemies that she's fighting right now, the Tartonas, they drop an Earth Jewel, or they have a chance to drop an Earth Jewel. So she's going after them for the collect a jewel from an enemy battle. There's also the Brins Lizards, which on her screen a moment ago were just right above them, that drop a Twist Jewel. And if you're familiar with the agility stat, you'll know that the Twist Jewel gives the most. So you'll definitely want to see
looks like that was an Earth Jewel that just dropped from one of those.
That's right.
So that point.
Mike is fighting some black dragons here. There is a point for defeating black and white dragons and potentially earning a holy fruit or a dark fruit, and having one person on a team hold one while the other person on the team holds the other. So if the black dragon is dropping the dark fruit, if they do, for Mike can be helpful, and then Mrs. Mike can catch up a little bit later on, deal with a white dragon, and potentially get a holy fruit. And yes, I think that was the first Iris item found. I missed who picked it up, but I did see it on my screen.
I see there's a goal for finding 5 Iris items. Are there other... I assume there are like other potential goals related to Iris items that just didn't show up in this particular run?
So, in past Jelly Jam history, or even Fatal Blowout history, there have been points related to finding Iris items. Across 2 hours, having a team of 2 people find 5 Iris items just kind of seems like a decent balance. It's not too few in that finding 2 or 3 might happen really easily, but it's not too many that finding 8 or 9 might. And also, there isn't a requirement to be holding them, so if you find them but then die 2 seconds later, well, you still found it, so it just kind of counts on a checklist or scavenger hunt of, hey, I did find it.
Oh, interesting, okay.
Fatal Blowout events, which if you're unfamiliar, are just pretty much straight speedruns with a few point incentives along the way based on usually stuff that you find along the way or a couple of tasks. Old sword for Hoppie. Those events also have points provided out for Iris items, although those events, being much more centered around killing the jelly, mean that the Iris item is usually, at best, a tiebreaker.
Whereas this is a much more scavenger hunt bingo card style of objective system where it's like, killing the jelly is just one source of points that is comparatively minor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got 2 teams across 2 hours opening a lot of chests. This is a standard speed run where you have one person opening almost the standard amount of chests you'd want a person to open, maybe a little bit more for comfort, which isn't that many.
It sure is a ghost ship.
So one of my favorite points involves ghost ships, and it is the get back attacked by a ghost ship. Ghost ships are stationary enemies like the blue mimics, but they face downward, which means that you can be below them, also face downward, and then have a surprise attack warning come up just because, as you can see on MikeMike, that's what he did. It's just kind of silly to imagine a boat getting the jump on you. A stationary boat getting the jump on you.
It's not moving. Well, you see, I walked backwards and I bumped into it.
It just caught me by surprise. Now, there is another point incentive that can be earned from defeating ghost ships. They do summon these skulls that you'll see on MikeMike's screen. If you look below on Mrs. MikeMike's screen, you'll see the green flame skulls. That is the battle in which they normally appear in. They don't normally come paired with ghost ships, so defeating them here can supplement that whole defeating a torrent point, because this is defeating an enemy that doesn't normally appear in a battle. There are some other enemies that the ghost ships can summon, including leeches, which are the horrifying enemies. You don't want to be stuck with them. But these guys are not too threatening, so you can try to take advantage of just killing something pretty gentle on these guys and get a 2-for-1 if you didn't manage to get one earlier on. And I don't believe MikeMike was able to get a torrent point earlier, so I believe that's why he did this here.
Yeah, it looks like that's checked off now, and filling in one of the few things that was left behind.
Sizzle Sword for Michie. That is a fire elemental sword that's usable by both Maxim and Salon. It's a blue chest sword. It doesn't have a great value to use against the jelly as a standalone weapon, but when paired with a Hydora Rock or Cancer Rock, because of its incredible power, it can do a very, very large amount of damage. It is fire elemental, which may seem a little confusing when comparing it to the Blaze sword that is Salon exclusive, which is not fire elemental, despite Blaze being the fire elemental capsule monster. Now, the next point objective that I think MikeMike is considering going for is related to this Orky. This sprite that we've seen as Hydora's earlier is replaced with an Orky, which is an enemy that can attack up to 8 times per turn. They can come in pairs. If you get lucky, they'll use an attack called Triple Blast, which is just a single fire elemental sort of a burp blast attack, and it's not going to punish you too hard, versus what he's doing now, which is just taking 8 straight hits from an Orky. It is a point to survive a round of combat that includes at least one Orky acting. So typically, you'll see players with Decker not being too afraid to go for this, because Decker can survive usually 4, sometimes 5 hits on his own. The rest of your team is usually pretty squishy if you don't bring Guy.
Yeah, it's pretty much what happened here.
So he's fortunately got Valor, he's got Champion, he's got the means to recover his MP. So that was a pretty safe and easy point for MikeMike to earn. Players that don't have Rally or Quick and Mighty Revives are going to hesitate very, very hard before even looking at Orkies. Meanwhile, Mrs. MikeMike earns the point to have multiple players affected by a status ailment. There's that Blaze sword for Michie that I was talking about. That Holy Elemental Blaze sword. which can only be used by one person, unfortunately. And, well, I think it was Habkiname that brought Salon last time. He would have been the only person in the entire loadout of all of the Jelly Jam players that would have been able to use that Blaze Sword. So you'll see more ads from Hoppie. You'll see Hoppie casting Destroy out, and this is the point in which our runners are starting to sweat a little bit, probably, because in order to try to maintain the use a single deadly weapon across both teammates point that they both currently have, neither one wants to break that and have each party member or each player equip a deadly rod or a deadly sword to try to burst through some of these tougher enemies that you just don't want to have to deal with punching. It's unfortunate, but sometimes that just means you have to look for other means to get kills. Tia, Lexus, and Salon can all cast Destroy, whereas Guy cannot, so it does mean in the context of this run that Guy is automatically a little bit worse because if he doesn't have access to Destroy, he can't kill things very quickly. He can sponge some more hits, but he can't kill things quickly, and from floor 60 onward, you get to the point where a lot of enemies can just wall you pretty hard. They'll have upwards of 1, possibly 2,000 HP. Many of your player characters' attack abilities barely deal over 200 unless you have a good elemental affinity, which only makes you deal maybe double that outside of a crit. Oh, there's an Iris Ring for Michie.
That was a afflicted status ailment to a Sphinx as well.
So there's a few ways you can do that. It's rare that you, in the context of a run, as a general runner, may have to do that. But the Freeze Ball item, the Deflect spell, and a couple of Capsule Monster tricks can apply a few status ailments. But other than that, there's not too many ways to actually afflict an ailment. A terrifying encounter for MikeMike, the most common probable run ender here. He manages to dodge a bullet. Hopefully.
So, one question about the defeat the jelly and defeat the jelly before the time runs out. Does, like, having the jelly call the time limit and defeating itself count as defeating the jelly?
No,
But, so what's the difference between that and the time running out?
So, there is a general, I guess, rule of mercy that we have in the cave run community for just cave competitions as a whole that allow you to, if you get to the final floor where there's nothing to do but fight the jelly, will give you as much time as you need to get yourself set up. So you could get to the final floor at, say, an hour 59 and just take your time, feed up your capsule monster, deal with your equipment as quickly as you need to, and just pace yourself. Or if you're feeling gutsy and you have enough time on the clock, just equip what you know that you have to do, go rush the kill. So if you get there at, say, an hour and 45 minutes, and you know that you only need a minute and a half to fight the jelly because of the stuff that you have, just toss them on and go for it. But if you want to take the time for some safety and feed up a capsule monster to its 4th form, just have some additional time and insurance to damage, we as a community just have a general consensus to allow that. In a general speedrun, we won't allow that, but in the competition, we feel like it makes things a little bit more fair, since getting a jelly kill in of itself is hard enough as it is. So this the simplest way you can think of to throw a bone.
Yeah, okay. That explains that, that dichotomy there that I wasn't quite understanding.
So events like Fatal Blowout will have it where if you defeat the jelly in 15-minute increments under 2 hours, then you'll earn more points based on how quickly you do it. This event is just defeating it in under 2 hours because there's so many other things to do along the way. We don't have multiple, I guess, steps, you could say, related to defeating it in a certain amount of time. Michie's in a scary, scary situation here. He's got a Gold Gorm below him. She has a little bit of time to deal with, because that genie's blocking the way until it rotates. Fortunately, this Mega Cyclops above him moved into him. He'll have to kill it here, but then he'll have a safe chance to move up. So Mega Cyclopses are deceptively fast. They have the ability to one-shot anybody that's not really tanky like Decker or Guy. Ooh, an Iris Jewel from Mrs. MikeMike. So requires a little bit of delicate play to deal with Mega Cyclops just because of their high power. They're not too threatening otherwise. The green dragons right there that you see on the screen, though, are white dragons, and they are incredibly tough because they can come in groups of 3. They will outspeed you. They can all cast Ice Valk or an even more powerful ability called Cold Stream, which, unless you have a Crystal Shield on one of the girls, Tia or Salon, it will just wipe you after getting hit by 2 of them, except for maybe Decker, depending on how his HP is doing. So much like the Salamanders that you see on Hoppie's screen, White Dragons are like the Ice Elemental equivalent of them, only they can come in 3s.
Mm-hmm.
We have no cores on Mrs. MikeMike's screen, 2 of them.
Yeah, 2 of them stand around to get killed, and that is something you definitely like to see as a runner. Curious to see what Mrs. MikeMike's levels are now. Possibly after yet another no-core battle.
Looks like 31 so far. Even if she doesn't get any more, it looks like she managed to get 1 more no-core here. She's pretty much set on levels at this point for the rest of the run. Michie and Hoppie have been going through some dangerous situations. MikeMike is getting past a lot of the danger that's coming his way, but he is to the point now where the enemies that are going to block his way are going to be very difficult for him to kill. Pretty soon, pretty much the only stuff he'll find are Archfiends and Metallic Dragons, or Dark Summoners. All 3 of them can be game enders with even 1 single misplay. And Genies, which are only slightly less dangerous, which have the ability to suck up his MP, or otherwise just wall him for time, but may not necessarily result in a game over if they show a little bit of mercy. Even more cores for Mrs. MikeMike. Now, from floors 58 to 60 are where the no cores appear, is also the last chance that our runners have to earn Hydora rocks by killing either Sea Hydoras or High Hydoras, which are the green snake sprites that you see on screen. There is a point incentive for a team to be holding 2 across each party member, so one person could hold both, or the other person could hold 1, and each party member could hold 1. Michie going for the point here by using the stat buff option, so having 3 characters use shield, and then having Decker use a magic guard or a mind gourd. Even though the magic guard didn't actually do anything, it does count as the point there. So black dragons aren't necessarily the worst enemy to use this on. And getting shield late did result in him slowing down a little bit for doing that. So he did have the ability to take advantage of that there. He lost Tia along the way, but it wasn't super game ending or anything. Hoppie, however, dancing with white dragons. There's only 2 here, which means they're not quite as game ending if he does get a sour hand tossed to him. So hopefully he'll come out of this okay, despite them being super fast.
And I don't believe he's running any deadly weapons either.
Mm-mm. Fortunately, they only go one time. He barely squeaks by and survives. They're weak to fire, and of course destroy, like we're seeing here. So hopefully they'll go down easily. And if one's down, the other one is not going to be a game ender. We see MikeMike going for some kills on these enemies. They're not super important that he does that. However, the Gorgons, which are the big Minotaur-looking dudes, they drop a Gorgon Rock, not to be confused with the Gorgan Rock, which has one of those fractional abilities that we were talking about earlier. They give decent XP.
Until you specified that, I had not realized those are two different items.
Oh yeah, so the Gorgan Rock that was found earlier on, that was used by Michie with that combo attack to kill that torrent, they can be dropped by Orkies. The Gorgon Rock cannot be found in a blue chest. It can only be found by defeating and collecting from a drop from a Gorgon. So the one-letter difference there is massive, because while combo attack is generally useless outside of very rare situations, one of which we saw earlier, the Gorgon Rock has a 1/8 fractional of current HP damaging ability, and it's equipable as an accessory. So it can work as a jelly kill option for characters like Lexus, who don't really have that much else to do, especially if they don't have a weapon like a Lizard Blow to deal a 3x or a 3 times damage attack. Also, as Domsky said in chat, Michie used a Confused Ball on Orkies, so that way it could make it only attack once. If an enemy is confused, it will still attack, but it won't use any of its abilities. And the attack it does is one single randomly assigned attack, whereas a non-confused Orky would just do whatever it feels like, attacking to 8 times or using a triple blast ability. And, well, he's dealing a ton of damage around. So he played it safe by sort of weakening it, by confusing it, and then taking the hit. Something that a lot of our players will do against enemies like genies later on, so that way they don't take big hits from them related to their multi-targeting magic attacks, or the absorb thing, which steals all of their MP. Hoppie gets extremely lucky here fighting 2 ghost ships, which cannot do anything but summon allies, unless there's no room for them to summon them. Then all they can do is defend. He gets a back attack against a ship that can literally do nothing to him.
Yep, and it's the easiest tick off on the sheet yet.
Mm-hmm.
And looks like Michie's probably gonna pull out the second half of that very shortly. Mrs. MikeMike actually did not pick that one up, and I lost track of what floor she was on.
She's fighting Warm Eyes, so she's in the low to mid 60s right now. Ghost ships appear in the low 70s,
okay.
So she's not quite there yet.
Not quite at floor 70 yet. 65. All right, so MikeMike is at floor 80 something now.
I think I saw 82 for him, and with 22 minutes left, he has a pretty good shot to make it to the jelly. His kill chances are still kind of tight without a Decker Blade, though, so he's probably going to be hunting a bit more for something there.
We have Hoppie just entering 74.
Oh, you'll notice MikeMike currently has no MP across all 4 of his characters. This is intentional. There is a point incentive in the 81 to 90 range to have all 4 characters with 0 MP.
Oh, these fire genies are terrifying like that, though.
Mike took a risk there by not putting Decker into the back row, but he did luck out in that no one actually ended up dying there.
Well, by no one ended up dying. I think he just mean Decker ended up not dying because
yeah.
Yeah. It was looking like that could just be the end suddenly.
Yeah, so despite the genies having an elemental attack based on whatever they are, their elemental attack is a physical attack. It's not a magical attack. So Decker being so defensive means that automatically he is a little bit more chunky and able to absorb a bit more from the back row, where melee attacks deal less damage by default. So in terms of genies, there are 4 different flavors. The fire genies that we see on Hoppie's screen, as well as the earth genies, the brown ones with the purple cloud. There are also well genies, which are blue, and wind genies, which are green. Wind genies are among the fastest enemy in the cave. You are not outspeeding them, and they are extremely, extremely threatening. So one thing to worry about is just having a potential encounter with genies. Being a wind where there can be 2 or 3 that outspeed you and possibly absorbing, well, just a brutal, brutal assault of attacks.
This genie fight is not going wonderfully for Hoppie, as he's missed some instant deaths, and then after Tia goes down, runs away.
So it's a little under 20 minutes in the cave. A lot can still happen, but as you can see, these scary enemies do require some patience in dealing with, some methodic play in terms of getting around and not accidentally losing too. Now, you just saw on Mrs. Mike's that cold stream ability. You can see how much damage it did even to Decker. So eating 3 of those from enemies that outspeed you could be fatal. Mike's dealing with wind genies, who are weak to the water element. They're not quite the strongest, but they sure do pack a punch, especially with their voltage bolt attack, which you just saw.
That, on Michie's side, though, was a close one.
The Archfiend Leech fight is probably among the worst fights to deal with, almost more so than double Archfiends. Artie can potentially outspeed an Archfiend and Deadly Rod one of them to death.
Yeah, that's not what happened. We got a ninja usage from Decker after surviving from the skin of his teeth to finish it off.
Not something you see every day, but an amazing play. And it really teaches you about using what limited resources you have in this game to just get by with whatever you can.
I don't know what the accuracy on ninja is, but it is an instant death.
So the ninja skill, it comes from the rock only. The Misto Jewel, which comes from killing ninjas. It has a 60% chance of instant death. Otherwise, it just does a little bit of damage, just like if it were a regular attack. So relying on a 60% chance there is, well, anything that's not 100% is scary. But it does have a higher chance to instant kill than the Destroy spell, which is worth noting. And it's pretty much the only way Decker can do an instant kill, which is also just a neat thing to know. Hoppie getting unlucky on these ice rods. They come in the Archfiend Sprite, but don't always bring Archfiends with them. They're not the most threatening, but they do have Cruel Storm, which hurts a lot, and they do have, I believe, the ability to cast Destroy, which, as you've seen, is a chance to instant kill.
So with 16 minutes left and an 8-point gap, what kind of things do you think the PB and JJ team could do to try to even up the score before this is over?
That is a good question. There are a couple of things, a couple of points that either one of Hoppie and Michie can do to earn some additional credit. They can do what they can to finish up earning the apron points, so that way they can combine, get one more point there. I think Hoppie has not yet equipped an apron into battle, or if he has, I didn't see him do it. They can set up a situation where all 4 of their characters have a full HP, MP, and IP bar. Now would be a pretty good time to do it if they can get Tia's IP up. Right now, it's a little difficult to do so. They can also consider providencing out and fulfilling a couple of loose ends after going a bit further and completing some goals here. Ideally, I would suggest that they try to get to the point where Genies steal all of their MP on the floor's 81 to 90 goal, and then providencing out, trying to rush another Providence and Providence out a second time.
Okay, that's an interesting push that I wouldn't have considered, as opposed to just trying to get to the jelly. Do you think they won't have enough time to get to the jelly?
Well, with the limited resources of being able to use only one deadly across both party members, if they want to maintain that point, one of their players is going to be sandbagged there by default. I think Michie has a Decker Blade. I don't remember if both Hoppie and Michie do. But if Michie is the only one with the Decker Blade, he's going to really have to book it. And he has a lot to do along the way.
Michie's also the one that's using a deadly on Archie.
He is.
Or on Artie, rather.
Yeah, so he's going to be the one that's most likely to make it to the jelly if he does.
But it's like a good 25 floors away, so that really is putting on the gas.
So ideally, if he were to do that, he would have to pretty much forego opening chests and hopefully not get stuck in any more sticky situations like party rooms or times where he's got to fight through a wall of enemies blocking a doorway or leading foes around. It's all this time-consuming stuff that he has to figure out how to deal with. And Hoppie doesn't have that much left to do. He does have a couple of stuff that he can try to earn points for. If Hoppie were to Providence out within the next minute or so, dive back in, find that shield spell, and also a coma hit or a Fagoru, he could earn a couple of points by doing a second Providence and doing some singular points that they managed to not do along the way. Unfortunately, Michie is in a situation where his points that he would have had to earn that he skipped on in some of the early floors are coming back to haunt him, because with as many points as the MikeMikes have, the points that Michie might consider going back for, it would either be that or going for a jelly. That said, if MikeMike himself goes for the jelly, he's got Lexus, so if he defeats the jelly, he'll earn 2 points. Even though Michie himself, I believe, has a better chance to get the kill than MikeMike himself.
So MikeMike has that Myth Blade, but no Decker Blade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Myth Blade and the Old Sword, if he can uncurse that Deadly Rod from Artie as well.
Yeah, I believe he does have a Curse Lifter for that.
I think everyone's pouring and swimming in Curse Lifters at this point.
Yeah, nobody's really shy on that.
Yeah, it's rough though. When you brought up just saying what do I think they could do, this is the first time in which I don't feel like Michie and Hoppie may be able to come back. Being 8 points behind at this point is going to be near impossible to recover from. If they can both earn a kill, Michie and Hoppie, then that is a pile of points that they can sit on, because they could both conceivably make it to floor 99. They could both earn the point of using that tier 1 spell thing, and they could both conceivably defeat the jelly with 1 or 2 stipulations. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's potentially 5 points that they're sitting on right there. But again, there's still a few points along the way that they need to try to get, which the way MikeMike himself is going, even if he didn't get a kill, it'd be tight. I think this might just be it for the PB Jelly team. I'm holding out for them because the two of them are pacing extremely well, and they have a good shot to get.
There's a couple things that they do have on the Mike team. they're both similar floors, so they're gonna have a much easier time with that. Both reaching floor 99 and also being 91 to 98 at the same time.
So Hoppie just entered
Mrs.
91.
MikeMike is still in the 70s.
Now, Hoppie just entered 91, and if Michie can get a little further, then they will share that team goal of having both players on the team in the 90s range, which is 1 point that they get for pretty much doing nothing. Because as Hoppie keeps diving, Michie will just earn it by doing again what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, we might also see those capsule monsters get leveled up, because getting to 91 kind of opens up that objective as well.
Now, all of our runners, I believe, have gotten at least 1 or 2 magic fruits as well, so feeding to 4th form might be easier than I'm assuming it's going to turn out to be. Hoppie's not opening any more chests. I think he's going for the jelly kill.
Yeah, I think it's one of their, it's one of their ways that they can actually keep in this game, isn't it? Is getting a jelly kill, especially if Mike Cubed does not get a jelly kill on their side.
Michie with a Gades blade. I believe he's got the Decker blade already, but gosh, that must be salt on the wound right there. Ooh, Hoppie getting lucky.
$94 for Hoppie, $95 for Hoppie.
I'm going to swap audio to MikeMike's game. Hopefully, it can be heard. Hoppie and Michie are making incredible time. Now, bear in mind, when Hoppie, Michie, and Mrs. MikeMike were all in the 40s, MikeMike himself was in the mid-60s. So, for Hoppie to have caught up to MikeMike and be only
passed, 96 for Hoppie and 93 for MikeMike at this point.
I think MikeMike himself is just a little bit unsure of his ability to get the kill. He does have the time to open chests, but I think, of course, you're tense in this situation. If you're not looking at the scorecard of whatever your opponents have, then all you're thinking about is, I gotta go. I can't stop. I gotta get this kill. I gotta do my best.
I feel like also, like, if they are looking at it, it's like, okay, we've got a comfortable lead, and I don't have what I need to kill the jelly. Let's try to improve my chances.
Speaking of chances, Hoppie's chances are just flushed down the toilet.
No.
Hoppie rushed a little too hard.
Oh, gosh. Well,
now,
maybe now's where you just try to pick up some of those early things, like just find, like, maybe you rush to floor 20 and try to get a Providence.
Unfortunately, at this point, it's just a very tough recovery. But Hoppie is a long-time Providence runner. He knows how to dive very quickly. And conceivably, he could get a Providence within 5 or so minutes and zip out of there, along with maybe completing one other thing along the way.
Yeah, Hoppie never did that apron either, so... But you'd have to open boxes for that, and I don't think Hoppie's interested in slowing down for boxes at this point.
MikeMike,
they didn't mark it off on their card, but I do think that they pick up the 91 to 98 at the same time.
Ooh, I may have to go back and clip that to confirm. We'll see what floor Michie's about to enter here, and I'll confirm it, because he could be on 89 at this moment.
Yeah, that's 91.
Yeah, Michie just entered 91, so he missed that.
That's really unfortunate for them.
Uh-oh.
Oh, that is uh-oh.
So gold dragons have the ability to use Stardust Blow, which is pretty much a party wipe. They can cast Zap, which is almost a party wipe. And they can cast Trick, which bumps up their attack power, and they can just punch. Now, the surprise attack means that of their gold dragon triple turns that they get per turn, and then silver's double, he has to pray for 6 actions not to include Zap or Stardust Blow, and then 4 more to not include Diamond Dust from the silver dragon, which, when combined with even Zap, would be a wipe. He got... You can see what one attack just did to his party. And how he managed to survive that, I don't even have words for.
And this is why you don't get IP on Tia. Tia being the only casualty there, somehow.
Mike playing it safe with a smoke ball to get out of a combat situation against even one gold dragon. You saw how risky it was a moment ago. What is Mike doing here? Is he going for just a little additional EXP before this kill? I think so. Oh no, he has to get IP. So he has to kill the gold dragon.
Oh, he's going to kill the gold dragon and get racked by the copper dragon a little bit, which is a little bit safer.
So he does an interesting play here by casting Fake. Artie on his own is just not quite fast enough to outrun the copper dragon on his own, but Fake, I think, just sealed the deal. So now he's going to do the game where he just sits here and hopefully takes punches, or one Cinder Blast would be ideal. Interesting Snow Sword for Michie. The Snow Sword is only equipable by Tia or Salon, but it does boost its user's defense by a pretty good chunk. So he might want to put that on Tia just to give her a little extra defense, just in case. Although at this point, it's such a tense situation that I don't know if he's really thinking about getting her IP at this moment. And there are situations where she may not even want to get Tia IP. You might just be thinking about Decker, Artie, and Maxim, and have Tia just cast a couple spells from the back row.
Looks like Hoppie's throwing in the towel here. Says he's on strike.
Hoppie's play was admirable. And
it was admirable, that push for the jelly, like being like almost 10 floors behind Mike at one point, and
he was
60 to 70s, 20 floors behind at one point. And then just being at 96, like three or four floors ahead of Mike was an incredible push.
Oh, stop.
And could have been the thing that their team needed to even up that score.
So with Mrs. Mike having 2.5 minutes left to go, and her being on floor 70-something, she likely isn't making it to the jelly, but she might luck into getting another point if she can make it to the next 10-floor increment and have genies suck away her MP. If she can make it past these silver dragons, that is, too. So Mike's MP or IP is looking full enough. Not capped, but that's okay. And with 1 floor to go, 1 final staircase, and 2 minutes to find it, you can bet Mike is sweating, hoping that he doesn't have to... Oh, no, there it is.
All right, making it to...
So we have an interesting setup here. Looks like he may not be using the old plus myth. He's using the Sky Sword with Cancer instead on Decker, which is a pretty good move because Decker's... Oh,
no, there's the swap to the old sword.
With the old sword, the Cancer Rock can get a usage as well. And with Decker's very high attack power, you want him to get as many standard attacks out of it So he gives Maxim the Myth Blade, which is slightly more powerful, and gives Decker the Old Sword plus Cancer Rock combo, so Decker can have more attacks despite being utilizing the weaker weapon.
Yep, 936,
Really?
118.
That's it.
And 3.
2300.
With Trick boosting everyone's attack power from Lexus, that's a good usage of him in the back row.
So after the first round, we're at 45-27.
So we have that devastation was about as bad as it possibly could have been, unfortunately. The front row devastation, which I didn't even see.
I didn't see it either, unfortunately.
See, I'm
Or
coming
about
out.
5,000 damage, but I don't know what that devastation did.
Yeah. It could have done about 700 or so.
So if it did about 700, then we're still about
Pause.
around 6,000 damage
I
done.
paused it.
Yeah, so
So we probably won't reach the 10K.
this may not be our kill, unless he has a secret weapon for Lexus in the back row.
I'm impressed at how much the Capsule Monster has contributed here, in that it actually chose to do something that did damage all 3 turns.
Alright.
You see Decker dealing incredible damage, 445 with one of his attacks, and who knows how much with his other. With everything sort of glitching out, unfortunately.
Don't know the exact damage that did there, but it was around 7,500.
Yeah, I'm going to assume about 75 to 8,000 as well. It just shows how important the Decker Blade is. Having all that other stuff and no Decker Blade, unfortunately, just doesn't necessarily score for a kill. Well, that said, we would call this a run, so give me just a moment. I'm going to drag everybody in here for voice. Happens to be the round.
Man, that was actually closer. After I rewatched the tracker, that was actually closer than I thought it would be.
Yeah, that if Hoppie's push to the jelly made it, like that was kind of your one big hope to get back in it. Like you were really putting on some steam and doing a lot to catch up to the Mike Cube team.
But I kind of realized I had the IP, so let's go, I had the kill, so let's go for it. I mean, the issue of our team was kind of like Mitch got all the points. I didn't got in the team version, and I got all the points Mitch hasn't got. I mean, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, those team points, just only for half. And then, unfortunately, Michie also kind of like missed those early this Wispy and Honor Fruit from Battle Point, which would have brought us actually along this to 33 points, which would have been pretty good, a really good score. So therefore, we had a really good performance, and GG to the Mike family for bringing in the highest score in the tournament history so far.
Yeah, GG guys. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about my run. I felt like I played well enough. 1 or 2 like mistakes over the entire run, but I mean, when you don't get a single offensive spell or healing in your first attempt, so your problem is out, and then it takes like another 30 floors just to get anything of like any worth in terms of spells, then you know it's gonna be a bad day, and you know there's no shame in losing. I mean, I play well enough. That's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah, you certainly did have the poor luck there.
And there at the end, losing to those dragons, you know, I just had to go. I wanted to make it to the jelly within the time limit, so I had to run, you know. But then you gotta take the 25%, so that just does not ever happen.
That unfortunate death to the Dark Summoners, that was kind of like, no, please not.
Yeah, dragons never kill anyone, but the Dark Summoners definitely will.
The legendary indoor Dark Summoner random teleport.
Yeah, that's fun.
There was literally one point the Dark Summoner shouldn't have been. It was exactly there.
So, how did your runs go, Mike Mikes? If they're there.
I know they had a little.
Yeah, we're here.
Well, yeah, Mike, congratulations to you. It cut out a little bit, so we didn't see all of your damage in the jelly battle, but it looked like you had some kind of cruddy rolls, and it looked like you were struggling to just try to get the kill ahead of time, if at all, with Lexus not having much to do, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's tricking and ice valking. I thought about actually bringing Darby for a little bit more average damage because I felt kind of light. I had a Mythblade, Old Cancer, and Uncursed Deadly Rot with Zap and Ice Valk, but not quite enough damage.
Yeah, I picked Gady's Blade up there like 91 or something, but beyond that I had literally nothing. And the Hidora Rock and the Cancer Rock, that was it. So yeah, that was nothing I could have done in this run, but oh well.
Well, you guys still put up a good fight, and
You guys scored? I mean, you guys got 22
the fact that
last
all
time,
of our runners made it
so this time,
to the 70s plus, and Michie, the fact that you Providence out and still made it back into the 90s in the time limit was very, very impressive.
Yeah, that was pretty nice. Yeah, like I said, I feel like I played well enough. You know, the cave just to give you that little bit. I mean, I have a love-hate with the cave, and today it was more hate than love. It's whatever.
Sounds like you had a pretty good run, Michie, to get back down to 90s after Providencing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I played well, but everything else was shit.
Ellie, were you happy that I got the half of the 88% IP on 488 point?
Yeah, I realized just how difficult that point to earn is, and
it's insane.
Mostly because getting that far is enough of the challenge at this point, not to mention just finding a way to use it. But I'm glad you went out of your way to do it for me. It made me feel pretty good about everything. With the theme of Back to the Future, 88 miles per hour was the perfect completion.
Yeah, and there's so few weapons that actually have 88% IP too. Like, is it
the elemental swords?
No, it's not that bad actually.
Like boom sword, burn sword, all those have 88%, which is neat.
Yeah, no, it's not that bad actually, but there are a couple of blue chest items in there. So when you filter those out,
and you all found curse lifters too, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I had two. I just had nothing else than the fatal picks. So, you know.
Well, I
fought a lot of Gorgons.
Yeah, you fought a lot. I thought you were going for a rock there for a while. I just never got it. I'm going to make a quick formal announcement. First, I'd like to thank Silverfire for jumping into commentary on sort of short notice, coming from the RPG Valks, or RPG Valkyries, a great supporter of not only the Ancient Cave, but speedrunning for charitable causes as a whole. They've been great supporters of us, and I never have a problem supporting them. So thank you for joining us, Silverfire, on the couch. I appreciate you having, you being here for once, instead of us being on your side, and having to make you do all the tech work and everything. I'd like to again thank our runners for participating. We again had 8 people schedule themselves today, and having 2 sets of 4 people can sometimes be tough to schedule, so we're doing this one final time next week when we get the finals prepared on January 29th. You'll see the faces that you saw today, Mike and Mrs. Mike versus the German Freaks, Hapname and Domsky in the epic finale, as well as, hopefully, a battle for third place between Michie Hoppie and Travatox Calieris, if they're able to do so. Again, if you are interested in joining the Ancient Cave community, feel free to join us at the Ancient Cave Discord, which you'll see in the chat, and utilizing the community resources to spark your own run and become a part of our community, and maybe just have fun playing a game that either you haven't played in a long time or might be interested in giving a second try. And if you have any questions about the event itself, or the game that was featured today, or any of the runners, take a look at us in the Discord, or take a hop into the RPG Limit Break Discord as well, and ask away in there. So congratulations again. I'm going to let you guys enjoy chatter for a little bit if you'd like to talk on stream for a bit. And in a couple of minutes, we'll close everything down. So feel free to share your misery woes, your shout outs, anything else you'd like to do. It's the finals day coming up soon, so you've earned it. You guys have earned it.
Well, I'm calling it because I need to go to the bathroom. Have a good one, everyone.
Peter Michie.
You. GG, guys.
Yeah. Good
GG.
match, guys. I didn't hear anything about Hoppie's run. How did it go?
I don't get to participate anyway.